I hope the $2,500 I've sent you every month for 5 years has made your life easier. My grandfather's question stopped the dinner conversation instantly. I froze. I did the math in my head. $2,500 a month. For 5 years. That was $150,000. I looked at my parents across the table. My mother's face went deadly white. My father stared at his plate, refusing to look up. I turned back to my grandfather and said the 5 words that ended my family. I never received a penny. Before I tell you what my mother screamed when the truth came out, drop a comment. Where are you listening from right now? I want to see how far this story travels. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just looked at my mother's wrist. She was wearing a Cartier love bracelet. The gold caught the light of the chandelier, shimmering with a dull, heavy, expensive glow. I knew exactly how much it cost because I had stared at that same bracelet in a shop window 3 years ago, the same week I fainted at my desk because I was rationing my insulin. That bracelet cost $6,000. My insulin copay was $400. My mother, Cynthia, caught me looking. She instinctively covered her wrist with her other hand, but the damage was done. The math in my head clicked into place like a steel trap. They hadn't just stolen my money. They had monetized my suffering. I am Jessica, and I'm 26 years old. I'm an architect. My job is to look at a structure and instantly identify the load-bearing walls and the stress fractures. Right now, looking at my parents, I saw a building that was about to collapse. I just needed to give it a little push. Most people would have exploded. They would have flipped the table. But I learned a long time ago that yelling at narcissists only gives them fuel. If you want to destroy a liar, you don't argue with them. You let them speak. I reached into my purse. My hand was steady. I pulled out my phone, unlocked it, and opened my livestream app. I didn't look at the screen. I didn't check the lighting. I just propped it up against the floral centerpiece. The camera lens peering through the leaves, perfectly framing my father's sweating face and my mother's terrified eyes. We were in Texas. One-party consent state. As long as I was part of the conversation, I could record, broadcast, and distribute every single word they said. And I intended to broadcast this to the world. Jessica, my father, Richard, finally stammered, his voice cracking. You have to understand. We didn't keep the money. We managed it. For you. Managed it. I repeated, my voice flat. Like an investment? Exactly. My mother jumped in, desperate for a lifeline. You know you're bad with finances, honey. You're an artist. You're flighty. We put that money into things that would benefit the family image. Which benefits you. The live stream counter on my phone screen ticked upward. 10 viewers. 50. 100. So the Cartier bracelet, I said, pointing to her wrist. That benefits me? How? It's an investment in appearances, she snapped, her mask slipping just a fraction. People judge us, Jessica. If we look poor, you look poor. We did this to protect your reputation. And the vintage wine? I asked, looking at the bottle Dad was still clutching. Is that for my reputation too? Or is it because you like drinking my rent money? Stop being ungrateful. My sister, Brianna hissed. She finally looked up from her own phone, annoyed that the vibes were ruined. Mom and Dad have sacrificed everything for us. So what if they used a little of Grandpa's money? You didn't need it. You have a job. I have 3 jobs, I corrected her. And I live in a studio apartment with black mold in the bathroom. That's your choice, Brianna sneered. You chose to be a struggling artist. I chose to survive, I said. I glanced at my phone. 300 viewers. The comments were starting to scroll faster than I could read. The trap was set. Now, I just needed them to walk all the way in. We were protecting you, my father said, his voice gaining a little more confidence as he saw I wasn't screaming. He picked up the bottle of vintage wine again, the glass clinking against the rim of his goblet. You were young. You would have wasted that money on parties or trends. We put it into assets. This dinner? It's networking. It helps the family brand. He took a sip. That wine cost $600 a bottle. I watched the red liquid swirl in his glass. And suddenly, I wasn't in the private dining room anymore. I was back in my bathroom 3 years ago. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesday was the day I had to decide between buying groceries or refilling my insulin prescription. I had chosen groceries because I thought I could stretch the last vial a few more days. I was wrong. I remembered the cold tile against my cheek when I collapsed. I remembered the shaking, the gray tunnel vision, the terrifying thought that I was going to die alone on a bathroom floor next to a toilet that didn't flush properly because I couldn't afford a plumber. I looked at my father, enjoying the notes of oak and berry in his wine. That bottle you're drinking, I said, my voice cutting through the room. That's my pancreas. My father choked slightly. Excuse me? 3 years ago, I was in the ICU for diabetic ketoacidosis, I told him. I called you, Mom. Do you remember? I asked for $50 to help with the copay so I wouldn't have to skip a dose. My mother blinked, her eyes darting to the phone hidden in the centerpiece. She remembered. You told me you were liquid poor, I continued. You said the market was down. You said I needed to learn to budget better. That same week, you posted a photo of your new landscaping. The hydrangeas alone cost $2,000. We needed curb appeal, she shrilled, her voice pitching up. We were thinking of selling. It was a business decision. I almost died, I said. And you bought flowers. Brianna rolled her eyes, eager to defend her territory. Oh my God, stop being such a victim. You always do this. You act like you live in a war zone. Your apartment isn't that bad. My apartment has black mold in the ventilation system, I said, turning to her. I cough up blood in the mornings. I told you this last Christmas. You laughed and said it was aesthetic. It's an industrial look, Brianna argued. It's trendy. You posted a luxury haul video the day after I told you that, I said. You bought a Louis Vuitton tote bag. You held it up to the camera and said, treat yourself, because you deserve it. That bag cost $3,000. That was Grandpa's money. That was my rent. That was my clean air. I looked at the three of them. They weren't just thieves. They were architects of my suffering. They had watched me starve, watched me get sick, watched me live in filth, and they had monetized every second of it to buy shiny things. They didn't steal from a surplus. They stole my survival. I glanced at the phone again. The viewer count had jumped. 12,000 people. The comments were moving so fast they were a blur of angry emojis and shock. You didn't manage my money, I said, leaning forward. You blockaded my life. My father set the wine glass down. His hand was shaking now. Jessica, put the phone away. We can write you a check. We can fix this. I smiled. It was the coldest smile I had ever worn. You can't fix this, I said. But you can explain it to the police. My threat about the police should have made them panic. It usually does. But my mother didn't flinch. She just let out a sharp, incredulous laugh, the kind you hear in a boardroom when a junior intern makes a suggestion that is technically legal but strategically naive. She stopped wringing her hands. She sat up straighter, smoothing the silk of her dress. The mask didn't just slip. She took it off and set it on the table next to the centerpiece. Police? She scoffed. Oh, Jessica, grow up. No one goes to jail for managing family assets. You're being dramatic. I'm being robbed, I said. You're being audited, she corrected, her voice turning ice cold. Let's be honest, shall we? Since we're airing dirty laundry. We didn't take that money because we're greedy. We took it because you were a bad investment. The room went dead silent. Even Brianna stopped scrolling. Excuse me? I asked. Look at you, Cynthia said, gesturing vaguely at my outfit, a blazer I'd bought at a thrift store and tailored myself. You're solid. You're dependable. You're an architect. You sit in a back room and draw lines on paper. You're never going to be famous. You're never going to marry a senator. You're safe. She turned to Brianna, her face softening into a look of adoration that made my stomach turn. But Brianna? Brianna is a star. She has presence. She has followers. She's a brand. Building a brand takes capital, Jessica. It takes clothes, trips, connections. That money Grandpa sent, it was wasted on you. It was sitting in a bank account doing nothing, while Brianna needed seed money to launch her career. I stared at her. I realized then that I wasn't looking at a mother. I was looking at a hedge fund manager who had decided to liquidate an underperforming asset. This is the narcissistic mathematics. To them, a child isn't a human being with needs. A child is a stock. I was a low-yield bond. Boring. Stable. Invisible. Brianna was a volatile tech stock, high risk, high reward. In their twisted logic, stealing my insulin money to buy Brianna a Chanel bag wasn't abuse. It was portfolio reallocation. It's just economics. My father chimed in, emboldened by her logic. We allocated resources where they would generate the highest return for the family name. You were surviving fine. You're scrappy. We knew you'd figure it out. I was eating ramen noodles in the dark because I couldn't afford electricity, I said. And look at you now, he said, spreading his hands as if he'd personally coached me to success. You're tough. You're independent. We made you strong. If we'd coddled you with that money, you would have been soft. So you did me a favor, I said, my voice trembling with a rage so hot it felt cold. By starving me. We prioritized, Cynthia said, sipping her stolen wine. That's what leaders do. We bet on the winner. I looked down at my phone. The viewer count had exploded. 25,000 people. The comments were scrolling so fast they were a blur of white text, but I caught enough of them. Vile. Monsters. I hope they rot. My mom did this to me. Destroy them, Jessica. They thought they were explaining their genius to a naive daughter. They didn't realize they were confessing their sociopathy to the world. They felt justified. They felt righteous. They genuinely believed that my suffering was a necessary tax to pay for their golden child's shine. You're right, Mom, I said softly. I am a bad investment, because I don't pay dividends to people who abuse me. I turned to my grandfather. He hadn't said a word since the initial question. He was sitting like a statue, his face a mask of terrifying calm. He had watched his daughter and son-in-law admit to treating his granddaughter like a failed stock option. Grandpa, I said, I think they're done explaining. Grandpa Edward stood up. He didn't look like a retired old man anymore. He looked like the shark who had eaten half of downtown Austin in the 80s. Yes, he said, his voice rumbling like thunder. They are done. Grandpa Edward reached under the table and pulled out a worn leather portfolio. It wasn't new. The leather was cracked at the spine, the kind of folder that has held contracts, deeds, and death warrants for 40 years. He placed it on the white tablecloth, right next to the crystal wine decanter. He didn't slam it. He set it down with the gentle precision of a surgeon preparing to make the first incision. Richard, Grandpa said, his voice deceptively soft. Do you know what forensic accounting is? My father laughed nervously. Of course, Edward. It's for criminals. For audits. It's for finding things people hide, Grandpa corrected. Like termites. Or thieves. He opened the folder. Inside wasn't just a bank statement. It was a map. A map of where my life had gone. I hired a forensic accountant 3 days ago, Grandpa said. Because unlike you, Richard, I check my investments. And when I checked Jessica's account, I saw it was empty. So I traced the funds. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was a flowchart. This is the money trail, Grandpa explained, pointing a manicured finger at the first box. Here is the wire transfer from my trust. $2,500. Every first of the month. He moved his finger to the next box. And here is where it went 24 hours later. Every single month. To an LLC called Prestige Holdings. Sounds impressive, doesn't it? My mother shifted in her seat. That's our investment vehicle. For the family. It's a shell company, Grandpa said, his voice sharpening. Registered to you, Cynthia. And do you know what Prestige Holdings spent that money on? He pulled out another sheet. This one was a list. October 2020. Down payment on a Tesla Model X. January 2021. First-class tickets to Cabo. March 2022. Kitchen renovation marble countertops. Sub-zero fridge. Grandpa scanned the records. Jessica. Ever enjoy those marble counters? I've never even seen the kitchen, I said. They told me my shoes were too dirty. His jaw clenched. Here's the real problem, he said, tapping a line item. 2 years of mortgage payments. A Lake Travis condo. My parents froze. They thought the LLC hid everything. It's an investment, my father blurted. We'll sell it and pay you back. He was frantic, still believing this was a loan dispute, still thinking he could negotiate. Grandpa shut the folder. You think you can sell it? Of course, my father said, reaching for his phone. You can't, Grandpa replied. It isn't in your name. It's titled to Prestige Holdings, he snapped back. Grandpa leaned back, all quiet power. Have you heard of a constructive trust? Blank stares. When stolen money buys property, the law ignores the deed and returns the asset to the victim. His forensic team had traced every dollar of the down payment and mortgage to my stolen trust. While they got dressed for dinner, Grandpa's lawyers went to court. He slid a document across the table. Emergency order. The condo legally belongs to Jessica. My parents' luxury retreat transformed instantly into my home. Brianna screeched about her upcoming influencer weekend. Cancel it, I said, pocketing the keys. You're trespassing, I told my father. Be out by midnight. Call the police, he yelled. They're already here, Grandpa said, as 2 officers walked in. Cornered, my father tried to throw a grenade. He accused me of running up debts, then proudly admitted he'd opened credit lines in my name. Sign the deed back or I'll default, he hissed. I laughed and showed my phone. It's a live stream. 45,000 people were watching his confession and threats in real time. The officers had everything they needed. My father was cuffed. My mother was arrested too. Brianna sank to the floor, watching her online life burn. Hours later, I stood alone on the condo balcony, my condo breathing in peace, instead of poison. People say family is forever. But sometimes family isn't a burden you endure. Sometimes it's a tumor you cut out before it kills you. Tonight was surgery. Painful. Necessary. And I survived. The house and my life finally belonged to me.